Go.
Hello everyone, welcome to our presentation. We are so happy to have you here. So this is our team. We have Dion Nakachu as our project manager and Mandarin Singh as our software developer and me myself as a quality assurance. So this is our agenda today for our presentations. And so what is our project actually about? Our project is trying to improve our Epic Travel AI chatbot by implementing LLM, which is large language model, with retrieval augmented generation (RAG). Our aim is to provide relevant travel recommendation to our user to improve the user experience. So moving on, what is the goals and scope for this project? Our goal and scope for this project is actually to implement a dynamic content generation system and implement a user interface. And then the last is to continuously improve our travel content quality. Now I'll pass it to Dhiren.
Okay, so now I'm going to be talking about the flowchart. First, I'm going to explain how it works on a high level. So, as you know, we're doing this project for a travel company, and we have data in the form of internal data in the form of PDFs, and these can be stuff like travel itineraries. So all we're doing is we're just taking the data, vectorizing it, and storing it in ChromaDB, which is our vector database, and that will act as our knowledge source. Now we also have the query from the user, and we're also going to vectorize that. And then we're going to go into ChromaDB, our vector database, and then get the context from our internal data. So we have the travel itineraries. So we're getting the context, combining it with the user prompt, and then we arrive at the augmented prompt, which is just a fancy way of saying modified prompt. And we pass that augmented prompt to the large language model, which we're using OpenAI's GPT-4. Now, I split our flowchart into three parts. The first one is the data processing and storage part. The second one is the user prompt vectorization part. And the third one is the RAG part itself, which we use semantic search and we modify the prompt. So let's zoom into the data processing and storage part. So all we're doing here is we're taking these internal PDFs, we're extracting the text, cleaning up the text, splitting it into chunks, and then vectorizing those chunks. Now what does that mean? Let's see. So we have internal PDF data here. All we're doing is we're splitting it into chunks of little chunks of text. And tokenize is just a fancy way of saying that. So now, since we already have all these small chunks of text, we're going to vectorize them. Now you may be asking, well, what even is vectorizing, right? All you're doing is you're converting those sentences into a bunch of numbers, a list of numbers, and these are the vectors. And these vectors actually tie back semantically to the text, so they represent the meaning of the text itself. And we're storing all these meanings of the text in our ChromaDB database. Now these are just our code snippets on how we do that. Not really important anyway. Now we have our knowledge source. So the next step is we're going to vectorize the user prompt. So let's say you have a prompt here, right? You want to bring your kids to Genting Highlands and to this new ride called the Terraform Tower Challenge. So all we're doing here is we're using the same embedding model as earlier, OpenAI embeddings, to vectorize the text into a list of numbers. That's it. Now, we have two components in our whole system here. And we can move on to the final part, which is the RAG part itself. So all we're doing here is we're going to modify the prompt. How we do that? Let's see. We have the prompt here, we have a prompt template. And you may be asking what the prompt template is. You're just telling the AI, okay, you are a travel agent, going to help people with their itineraries and their travel related questions. Then we just dump the question in there. But then we also need the context, if you notice. How are we going to get it? Through semantic search. So we have this bunch of vectors floating around in the database that represents our internal data, and we have the user query vector. So we're going to go into our database and find the vectors that are closest to the user query vector. And we just take the top three of that. We have a way to rank it. Pick the top three as our context, and these are the contexts. As you can see, we already chose the Terraform Tower Challenge, and one of the contexts actually picked out the Terraform Tower Challenge and says it's a trailing ride. So now we just dump this context in our prompt template, as I said earlier, and now we have all the components in our system. So we just get a response from the large language model, which it says that, okay, if your kids don't like thriller rides, then you bring them to other rides. That's pretty much it. Now I'll pass it to Nata. Oh, Sarah.
Now let's continue with our user interface design. Start off with our home page. So you can have a look at this page. It's a really simple and minimalist layout, and it's all about intuitive navigations. So let's kick off by the search bar. You can have a look. It's central of the web page, and You can kick off your journey by just entering your destinations. Then you will have the relevant information that is given. So the principle of having this is actually allows people from different backgrounds to navigate this platform easily. So our aim is to make this website as straightforward as possible, so people can figure things out easily instead of like wasting time to plan and find the informations. So moving on, how do we actually navigate this page? You can have a look at the top. We have a navigation bar with some really important features, which is planning a holiday, travel ideas. We can get you to some really important informations. And then this web page also provides multiple language support. So as a Malaysian, you can use this web page easily and comfortably. We also have a sign in and register feature. So it will be quick, easy, and secure for you to kick off to start actually using this web page. So continue. This is the user interface of our chatbot, which is unlike any typical FAQ pages that only give you some really simple informations. This chatbot can actually provide you personalized and real-time response based on your unique preference and needs. So I'll pass it to Naka.
Thanks, Stella. So now we'll be talking about project management, and we'll be applying the Agile method to our project. So we'll be using the Scrum framework, which is used to apply the Agile method, and some of the activities include sprint planning. So in sprint planning, this helps us to decide the goals and deliverables for the sprint. And an example of a goal is to develop a new feature for the chatbot. And then another activity includes daily stand-ups, and this involves daily meetings to update each other about the task, about the progress of our tasks, and for example, discussing the integration progress for OpenAI. And then another activity is sprint review. So in this activity, we demonstrate what has been accomplished to stakeholders. So that, for example, we can show the working version of the chatbot. Okay, so now I'll be talking about the hardware and software specs. So I'll start with the operating system. And for the developer side, we suggest to use Windows 10 or later, because this is the most commonly used operating system. And for the user side, we suggest, they can use any operating system because our web app is accessible on most operating systems. So for the programming languages, for the backend programming language, we will be using Python because, for example, we will be using a Python library called pandas for data manipulation, such as data cleaning and data transformation. And then for the front-end programming languages, we'll be using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to develop our user interface. So for the development tools, we'll be using either Python or Visual Studio Code because we have experience in these two softwares. And these softwares helps us to debug, implement testing, and code assistance. Also, for the version control, we'll be using Git with GitHub, as this helps us to track changes in our code base. So for the project management tools, we will be using Jira, as this platform allows us to create tasks, organize work into sprints, and track our project progress. So for the cloud storage, we will be using Google Cloud Platform because this helps us to store and manage our project files and database, and also it helps to scale our storage up when the project grows. For the web browser, we allow to use modern browsers such as Google Chrome and Safari, and these browsers ensure proper execution of the chatbot interface. So for the hardware, for the developer side, this involves CPU, RAM, and GPU, and here are some examples of the hardware specs. And this helps us to perform fast processing, fast data access, and accelerate our computation time. For the hardware, for the user side, this also includes CPU and RAM, and here are some hardware specs examples. And this helps us to ensure a smooth and responsive user experience. So for our current status, we already finalized and submitted our RTM. And also for the prototype development, we have implemented functionality and applied semantic search. For the next 5 weeks, we focus on already preparing our presentation and then completing our project planning. And then for week 13, we'll be meeting with the company And for the following weeks, we will start the prototype and meeting with the company requirements and then continue the development. Okay, thanks.
Okay, everyone.